up and running. Where do you want to be?
Me and Trent we're planning on being in the quiet room over there, and then so you and Doug not around us. Get out. You know, the plan was just for optics to not have all four of us all around one computer.
Okay.
What if we just socially distance on all?
So, well, you can hop on your laptop on the link.
That's 6 feet away.
Yeah, well, you just don't want to reverb, so we'll be in that room, so we'll cut out the. Yeah, because then you'll be like, I feel like we're in the same building.
That happened yesterday. That lady I was talking to,
yep.
She got on the Zoom call on her phone and then had me talk her through how to get onto it from her laptop.
Oh, so
but then she was on the Zoom call on her phone and her laptop. Like there was 3 of us, even though there's only 2 humans, and it was like there was so much reverb. I was like, I'm gonna shut your phone one off now. Like I'm gonna like basically kick you out of this because I can't even hear what you're saying.
Yeah, you have to like mute one or
Yeah.
You two feel pretty good for it. Anything you want to chat about beforehand? So we don't cry.
All right, Kim's on.
Can you mute us for right now in case somebody else comes?
Yeah.
No.
Hi, Bubba. Hi. Hi. What's the matter? Hi. Hi. I don't understand. Hi. Oh gosh, I'm not muted. I didn't know I wasn't muted. I've been talking to Rooney. You're muted.
I had my sound muted on the computer, so I didn't even hear
Oh, okay.
you were muted.
I was over here being like, hey, Baba, hey, sunshine.
I literally just turned my sound on, and I was like, oh, she's talking.
Woo, good timing. I was mostly, I just realized that I wasn't muted, so Baba. How many people signed up, Mel?
We're between like 15 and 20 now. But I've had a couple people
Seriously?
say, yeah, I had a couple people email though saying that just now I just checked, there's 2 who aren't going to make it live and want the recording instead. So.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, your hair looks great, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Fixing my ponytail. Over here?
Also, I was going to have you on it if you're all in different locations, just to make sure that but I don't.
I was just thinking that. I was like, do you want me to stand here? Because I'm not talking.
I don't think I wanted you on just in case there was like an issue or something.
Well, I figured out, yeah, I was planning on helping watch the email to make sure no one, I can do that from my phone though, or the front desk computer.
Or the front desk, yeah, because they're going to be in the strategy session room.
So, okay. Oops.
Hey, Kim.
Hello, how are you?
Was that super delayed?
I had to unmute myself.
Oh.
Do you know when it's like Shift Control A, right? To like unmute yourself. Does that mute you too? Those commands, do you know?
Shift Control A.
There you go. So that is that's your quick to. So if you hit, Shift Command A will mute you and unmute you. There you go.
Do you want to know a faster way?
Mm-hmm.
If you watch this, if I mute myself and then hold the space bar, I can talk while I hold the space bar. So watch this. So now I'm talking and I'm holding the space bar down, and then I can let go of the space bar.
Wow. Okay. I had no idea. Look at that. 2 months in and I learned something new. Well, really like 2 years in. I learned something new about Zoom.
I know.
But
my haircut's tomorrow. I didn't time it well enough.
I mean, I'm not saying I noticed, not saying I didn't notice, but that's all right. That's all right. It looks good. It looks good. How are you? How was your weekend?
My weekend.
I know that was a while ago now.
It feels like eons ago.
I know. It was forever ago.
Yeah. No, my weekend was good. I'm going to pause the recording.
Oh, you missed all the good stuff.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for spending your Wednesday noontime. Looks sunny out there, so thanks for being inside and on another Zoom with us all for a wellness roundtable. So this idea came actually from Kim, who's on this panel today, and it was basically around this idea of, how can we kind of talk some strategy, some action items of not just exercise. We're certainly going to talk exercise, but some other components that we're all probably struggling with right now or navigating, which of course is the exercise side, which Josh is going to be speaking about, but we're also going to cover things like the nutrition side, which Trent will cover, and then more of the kind of managing the stress and managing kind of the overwhelm of everything right now. So kind of agenda for today, we'll do about 30 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes of questions that I have for the three coaches, and then we'll open it up to anybody else who's here on the call for questions. And please start to think about questions that you have. And if you don't want to forget them, the easiest thing to do, and if you think of it now before we get to the Q&A, will be to just put that in the chat box, and we can certainly get that answered after. So again, about 30 minutes of questions to the panelists on my end, and then kind of second half Q&A for those that are on the call. So that's a rough idea of the hour or so that we'll be on. For those that don't know or who are listening to the recording, Sperling Fitness is a personal training gym here in Kennebunk, and we work generally with those who are a little bit more intimidated by the typical gym, and we have the opportunity to coach them every single day that they walk in our doors, and currently right now also servicing them online. So we're super excited to have three of our coaches on here today. So Josh, Trent, and Kim are three of our amazing coaches, and I have about 9 or 10 questions that I'm going to go through and kind of roundtable discussion. The first one, Kim, I'd like to kick off with you. And so we're in week 9 for most of us of this quarantine. Week 9. How would you say if someone is feeling exhausted, they're frustrated, they're probably maybe stuck in a rut, what might be some words or wisdom for them?
Well, first of all, I'd say you're human, so welcome to humanity, because I think that's at this point we're all out of words for it. I think most of us, and we've already cycled through, grief has been a really, I think, an accurate description for many of us in cycling through all of those periods of griefs. But first and foremost, it's like, I think a lot of us are burning out with different pieces of this, whether that's working from home and that's the challenges there, or trying to actually homeschool your kids while working from home. And so it's first and foremost, it's to understand. I think it's okay that you're burnt out. And I think the other thing is that I think there's a tendency for all of us to say, yeah, I'm stressed, but like everybody's dealing with this. And so you're trying to minimize your own experience because it's like, well, everybody's dealing with this. And so I don't have a right to feel the way I feel. And so I think that that's probably my biggest message, just to say, you know what, you do have a right to feel however you feel. And I think it's important for you to, if you can, to give yourself a few minutes to kind of acknowledge that. And really, we'll get to it at the end, I think, to some more specific strategies as to how maybe to kind of overcome that. But I think in the moment, it's just let yourself feel the way you feel and try not to judge yourself. Please be cautious of social media. I hear a lot of clients saying, yeah, but I see everybody on social media that's like learning French and teaching their kids French and all this, and that's what everybody else is doing. And they're all loving working out from home. And I'm not, try not to compare yourself either, because that's certainly not the case. So that's probably, that's sort of my short answer on that one there.
Awesome. So just a couple things that I heard there. Burnout, it's okay. And most likely everybody to some degree is experiencing some level of that. And another thing I heard there was just realizing that it's okay that and you have your own experiences, and not to downplay that, and certainly not comparing yourself to others, which I know is very easy to do. So my next question, and we've gotten this a lot from our clients who have had to, shift from walking in our doors 2, 3, 4 days a week to now over the last 2 months, having to work out from home. So my question for Josh, to talk about workout space. So what would you say to somebody if they don't have a workout space in their home?
Great question, Doug. Sorry. So the biggest thing is a mindset change, kind of with all of this. For most of us, we're used to working out from a gym with stuff provided, and in your house, there's different roles for different parts of your house. Usually, like your bedroom's meant for sleeping, your couch is meant for scrolling on Instagram, and your kitchen is meant for eating, and so on and so forth. So we have different roles, and so at this point, you have to be creative and find a space that you can give that role of, this is where I work out. And I mean, that could be in your backyard, that could be a guest room that doesn't get used. Now reframing and saying, this is no longer a guest room. I'm going to clear out a little bit of space. It really only needs to be about like 4 feet by 4 feet, just something small that now you think of that as the workout space. And other things is you keep your stuff there. So if I have a couple bands, I have a foam roller, a mat, or I keep my workout shoes in that room. And so as you go into that space, what you do there is workout. I would say that reframing is the big part. Yeah. And not being used to, it's not the ideal, but it's what you have. So
awesome. So a couple things I heard there was just kind of labeling a space as a workout space. And we don't always, we take for granted that we think of these, whether it's Josh's silly scrolling through Instagram or watching TV in our living room. And that's kind of the label we put to our living room. I know a lot of us that are working from home, it's certainly been challenging if you didn't have an office prior to this to identify what your office space is. And I would say some of those strategies that you implemented for your office space can be a very similar strategy for your workout space, to actually label it as a workout space, whether it is your living room after 7 o'clock at night, but if for this hour it's your workout space, I certainly can appreciate that. So Josh, I want to stay on you for a second, and we've identified a space to work out, and we've kind of mindset wise reframed it as this is going to be our workout space. But we hear a lot of times from clients and alike, it's hard to stop and they're on Zoom calls all day long. They're working from home. They got kids to deal with. It's hard to stop and make the time to work out from home. So what kind of advice would you give to somebody that is struggling to find the time to work out?
It's a good question. Yeah. A lot of times you're kind of thinking of breaking up the routine or the habits, but sometimes we get stuck in work. So if we're working from home, it's easy for that just to flow in all throughout the day. And so finding planned interruptions for those times. So one technique you can use is setting an alarm on your phone to go off when it's time to work out. It could also be using those interruptions that happen in life already. So if your dog goes out to go to the bathroom at 6 o'clock in the morning, now that you're up, use the interruption to then do something active. And so that's what I kind of say planned interruption. The other big one is communication. So communicating with other people in your household. If you have a spouse or someone you're living with, communicating like, this is the time I want to work out. So please don't interrupt me. I don't have kids. They're probably not as rational as a spouse, but you probably can't be like, hey, sweetie, I'm going to be working out at this time. But trying your best to set a specific time, get in that routine that at 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 at night or wherever works for you, this is my time, and try to stick to it as much as possible, and setting timers to interrupt. If you're like stuck in emails or whatever you're doing to interrupt you, to pull you away. Another one, a good one to use is also kind of pre-set up that stuff the night before or during the day, meaning if I'm going to go for a run on your bench or whatever, set out your running shoes and your iPod or whatever you need for running. So when your timer goes off, you already have that stuff ready to go for your run. And then the last point I'll make on this is the workout doesn't have to be 50 or 60 minutes. And a lot of times thinking about, I gotta work out for 60 minutes right now, pull myself away, can be daunting. And one of the best things is just setting a small goal of, I'm just gonna work out for 10 minutes. I'm gonna work out for 5 minutes. What can I get done? What can I do in that short period of time? And that can sometimes snowball to a little bit longer if you're finding it hard to motivate you just even get started when that timer goes off, is just saying, what can I get done in 10 minutes?
Awesome.
Yeah.
So a couple things I heard there, and by the way, we are also using this as our podcast. So Kim and I will maybe pull in some podcast stories, and we share our spouse struggles with schedules and things like that. And I love Josh's point about, the days that Megan and I communicate about, hey, this is what I'm doing when. It sounds so obvious, right? But like, hey, I'm going to work out at 2:30 when Caden and Ellie are down for a nap. If that's communicated ahead of time, those are the days that the success rate of actually working out is pretty high, compared to like, hey, in 15 minutes, the kids are about to go down for a nap. Can I work out? And now, one of us has to rearrange the whole day. And so being a little bit more proactive is kind of what I heard there with communicating the schedule. So last thing on the, Kim, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, I just wanted to emphasize also the timer piece there, which is, at the beginning, we talked a little bit about burnout, and it's really hard to get started on particular things. And we know action breeds motivation, but when you can't get motivated, you just find yourself in the cycle. And the power of it could be a 5 or 10 minute timer, but when you set the timer, you make the decision to do either the thing it is you want to do or nothing. And so that might be for, if we're talking about workout right here. So you set the timer for 10 minutes and you will either do some exercises or you will do nothing. And by that, I mean, you're not going to, scroll on social media. You're not going to clean your house. You're not going to get distracted by that. And so just to kind of emphasize that, and you can use that for just about anything. You can use that for cleaning your kitchen, which my wife would like me to do more of, but she never listens to the podcast. So she's not going to, she doesn't know anything I say about her here, but you could use that literally for anything. So if you're in that place where you're just struggling to, with inertia, I love the trick of the 5 or 10 minute timer to do either the thing you want to do or nothing at all. So
awesome.
Can I add one more thing to that, Doug?
Yeah, sure.
So based off of what Kim was just talking about and what Josh talked about too, I don't know if anybody's ever listened to her, but Mel Robbins has a good a good video that you can watch. She talks about trying to shift the mentality to take this one step further. When you know the time, set a timer that counts down to that time. Think of it like the countdown of a rocket launching up into space. Instead of thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go, think 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And just the mindset of counting down to 0 is going to breed action a lot better. So setting a timer that, okay, I'm going to work out at 2:30. So I set a timer that gives me 30 more minutes to do what I'm doing, but it's actually counting down as opposed to just an alarm going off, will probably actually breed more action.
Awesome. That's a great little strategy there. Love it. Before we move on from the exercise and workout side, I'd love, Josh, we can start with you and then any other coaches that have some insights. So we've got our space and hopefully we've created time, even if it is 5 minutes. We've got our space and we're going to work out at 2:30. What would you suggest for people that either have no equipment or limited equipment and they're looking to potentially make some exercises a little bit more challenging?
Yeah. So the beauty with working at a gym is, of course, you have equipment to match the intensity of what you want. And from home, a lot of us just have body weight. And it can be boring, but also body weight's one of the most difficult ways to exercise as well. And a lot of times people that lift lots of external weight, like a barbell, dumbbell, will kind of like poo-poo the people that do a lot of body weight, but it's one of the most challenging ways to work out. So if you have been working out recently with body weight, you may actually find you're sore than if you were to work out with regular weights. It's just your body's getting used to it. Now, the big thing is to think of is kind of different levels of positioning of your body. So if I'm not able to do a push-up, I'm going to need to use a surface that's elevated. So the further I'm elevated from the ground, in general, the easier the exercise is going to be. So that could also be for like a squat, going to a bench, going to an ottoman, a chair, as well at home. And so shortening the ranges of motion for anything will also make it easier. And of course, the flip side is that increasing the range of motion, kind of get further, will increase the challenge. So that's one way. So elevating and decreasing elevation, or looking at it as an angle. So that's usually like push-up, squats, and stuff like that. And then, so if I don't have a weight, or if I have a light weight, there's one big thing we can manipulate, and that's what we call time under tension. And so that's just the amount of time that your muscles are working or underneath a load. And so if you don't have external loads, such as a dumbbell or kettlebell, what you can use is tempos. So if I do a squat, I can control myself going slowly, like 1, 2, 3 down, pause at the bottom, and then slowly coming up. So now you're increasing the amount of time it takes to do one rep, which is actually going to fatigue the muscles like it would if you were holding a weight in some regards. And so you can use that time under tension, so I can increase the amount, how slowly I do it. So slow down every exercise, be very methodical. So really, if I'm doing a plank, really focusing on bracing abs tight, breathing, taking it slow, not rushing. It's very hard. It's almost like meditation about working out. And then the other way is to increase the speed. So get more reps in, making it explosive. This is a little harder. It's more advanced because it can be harder on the joints. So it could be doing push-ups faster. It could be doing squats faster. It could be any exercise is increasing the speed at which you do it will make it more challenging if I don't have weight. If I do have weight, all those apply. It's just a little extra external load I can use.
Awesome. Kim, any before we move on from and then we'll also ask Trent the same question. So, a large part of that kind of 2 to 3 questions was centered around your workout space, the time to work out, and then, what you're actually doing for that workout or how to make that workout harder. Before we move on to the nutrition side of things, is there any other talking points or touch points we want to hit on with the workout side? We'll go Kim first and then Trent.
I mean, technically speaking, no. The place that I go to is to give yourself grace, which I guess, I don't think you can be too kind to yourself, at this time right now. And so I think it's the trying to adjust expectations is probably the biggest things. It's that your workouts at home are not going to look like your workouts at the gym, and that's okay. They might look harder, they might look easier, whatever, but that, to give yourself the grace and the ability to sort of adjust your expectations for, I think, what you think, a workout should look like.
Anything to add, Trent?
No, I think they both hit great points. I would just say, in regards to trying to find something, it's not definitely not a strong suit of mine, but a lot of people in these Zoom calls since we've been online have done a great job of discovering ways to use resistance. So if you're struggling to find that, I saw somebody using a case of water to do bent over rows with and all kinds of stuff. So you can get really creative there. And just kind of come up with clever ways to carry paint buckets and different things, run up and down your stairs if you have a couple flights, and just different. But to Kim's point, it's a very different expectation, and you have to get yourself into that mindset to understand that you shouldn't expect the same of yourself.
Yeah, love that. And I think that's a great ending point as we segue into nutrition, is kind of not copying and pasting expectations. And that's something that Kim and I chat a lot about on the podcast. And that's something that we use with our clients a lot, is, not taking, at this point, every week, having a little bit different expectation for that week and what the reality is for work, whether we're talking workouts or anything. I know for me personally, I think I can count on maybe 1.5 hands the amount of times I've worked out since all this started, right? And I was talking with clients yesterday that came to our outdoor workouts, and these were clients that were super consistent before all this. And I was chatting with a client that yesterday was their first workout since we went into quarantine. And so I think the expectations and to Kim's point, the grace of what you're dealing with, many of us are. Yeah, I think Kim and I talked about a couple weeks ago where people are falling into two buckets. It seems like there's either people that are bored, going out of their mind, or there's people that have never worked so hard in their life. I fall into this bucket right now. And so a little bit of kindness of saying, okay, well, workouts probably are not top priority, even though you could argue that they should be. The expectation might need to shift a little bit. So awesome stuff on the workout side. If you do have questions, we'll be opening up that shortly. If you do have questions regarding workout specifically, ways that we can help you, just put them in the chat. Because again, on the second half of this hour, we'll open it up to Q&A, and nobody likes silent Zoom calls. So hopefully you have some questions. On the nutrition front, so shifting gears, we'll start with Trent for the first question, and then of course the other coaches can add any context. I think, I can certainly speak for myself, and I'm sure everybody to some degree is really struggling on the nutrition front to stay on track, whether that is different routines or just overloaded with work, overloaded with having the kids at home. I don't think our 3 square meals a day and the routine of that maybe that we had before is the same anymore, or certainly hasn't been. And then I know, like I overheard Trent talking the other day, and I know a lot of us are doing a lot of takeout, right? Whether it's for good to support local businesses or just the convenience of doing takeout. So we're going to get into some specific strategies, but if you're struggling, like all of us are probably to some degree, to stay on track, Trent, do you have 2 or 3 kind of starting points or tips that you would give people that are struggling to stay on track right now?
Yeah, and I would probably start it with what Kim always says, which is be kind to yourself. Like the workouts are obviously different. Like we all have these routines, and again, to have the expectation to copy and paste yourself into what's going on right now is very unrealistic. I'm seeing one of 2 extremes. I'm seeing probably three different groups of people, right? People that are kind of staying right where they were. I'm seeing people, because of the extra time that they have and the time at home, are seeing pretty decent progress. And I'm seeing, of course, the other end of it, which is obviously what none of us want and we're trying to fight against, but it's going in the opposite direction. But a lot of those things, again, kind of relating back to being kind to yourself, a lot of those things when I'm seeing the people that are struggling right now, the reasons that they are struggling is not out of choice. It's not like they're just going like, yay, this is a free chance to just not give a crap, right? It's poor ways of dealing with the stress that's going on, right? So trying to look at habits are different, the environment is different, all that kind of stuff. And it's just trying to navigate, trying to create habits that are going to help you instead of hurt you. In this instance, for the nutrition groups that I've been running and stuff like that, the one thing that I continue to push is just trying to keep it simple, right? So as this has been going on, if you're somebody that's been struggling, you've probably found yourself struggling with no more than like 3 certain things, right? For myself, that struggle has been more drinks, the struggle has been more chips, and the struggle has been more takeout, right? And so it's trying to navigate, how do I keep track of that? How do I keep myself aware of those things and do it in a way that's kind, right? And the way that I find that is not super overwhelming, the most helpful way to do this is to choose one of those 3 things, not necessarily try to work on all 3, but choose the one that you feel like you can work on currently, and then grab a calendar and just start marking the day. A lot of these strategies come from some of the books that we've referenced in the past. One of them in particular, most recent, that we read as a staff, called Atomic Habits. But it's the act of just taking one action and tracking on a daily basis whether I did or didn't do it, right? And trying to get yourself out of the rhythm of not doing it, or doing it, I guess in the case of poor nutrition habits, of doing it faster. And anything in regards to nutrition is all about having awareness around it. And if I'm not tracking, it doesn't have to be journaling every single piece of food and counting calories, but it has to be some sort of mechanism that I'm just tracking to keep myself aware day to day of whether it worked or it didn't work, how well did it go, how well didn't it go, and then just stack the wins from there.
Yeah, we love as a team the book Atomic Habits and the habit tracker. A lot of us that are, a lot of you are on this that are clients, and we know the 100 workout challenge, right? And the 100 workout challenge is a great example of a physical tracker of your workouts, right? The goal is to get 100 workouts. And I believe the true habit tracker is doing it daily, right? So ours is an example of tracking 100 workouts on a card of 100 boxes. And that would be the example of a tracker. But the true habit tracker that Trent was referencing was picking something where every day, like Kim had a stretch where she was doing a habit tracker for posting on Instagram. And every day she would have a checkbox, boom, do that, because that was one of her personal goals. So in regards to nutrition, it could be something, as Trent said, very, very small, but very impactful, that has that snowball effect that we talk about, where it starts to build momentum. For you also have the satisfaction of tracking and seeing those get checked, the boxes get checked. So Kim, any additional insight on the staying on track right now and kind of the habits piece of things?
No, I love the habit tracker, and to your point, it wasn't something that I ever thought would work for me. I guess that might be the piece that probably was an eye opener for me, is that some of us who don't typically use maybe use a planner, and things like that, you might be kind of opposed to it as an idea, because you're like, well, that's not really my style. That hasn't worked for me in the past. And mine was the, just the don't break the chain, which comes from Jerry Seinfeld, which is put an X in a blank, have a blank calendar, put an X in it. And mine was on my refrigerator. I used a blue marker to do it, which was oddly more motivating than just using a pen. Tiny details there. But I was just really astounded too, when I was open to the idea, how effective it actually could be. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I would add, Doug, I've talked about this in the nutrition groups as well, but to continue to carry on that motivation, to carry on those habits and that consistency, what I've personally found really helpful with that style of tracking is it becomes a game. And I've talked about this in my nutrition groups. Like, you might choose that the game is a weekly game. You might choose that the game is a monthly game. I personally choose that the game is a monthly game. And so that one thing that I'm tracking, yes, of course, the goal is to not break the chain, but even if I do, at the end of the month, I tally up how many days I was able to accomplish it. And then the next month I set out to go and beat that, right? So it becomes this internal motivation and drive and competitiveness with myself, which I'm very competitive with myself, to now go out and beat it. Even if it's only by one, I'm going to beat that by one day next month, and one more day the next month, and one more day the next month. And it kind of breeds into that 1% better motto. It's not changing everything tomorrow. It's just being kind to yourself and knowing that there are going to be bumps in the road, but still trying to kind of find that competitive edge.
Awesome. Josh, anything you'd like to add?
No. I mean, I would say just, being kind, like everyone said, being kind to yourself, doing anything that can make you aware of what you're doing. I mean, during this phase, there's a lot of stuff I've become aware of. Like, I don't like drinking water anymore for some reason. So, but there's a lot of stuff I've become aware of, like habits, and not really labeling them bad or good, but just labeling them, like we said, kind of, okay, I might want to change that. And maybe right now, like, I know I need to drink more water, but I'm like, I'm not really ready to change that right now. But so I'm not gonna beat myself up. But yes, so tracking, I love it. But just kind of be aware of, take note of what you're doing. Doesn't necessarily have to be bad or good, but if you don't like it, set out and make it a game.
Speaking of games, actually, there was, I believe the article was from, I think it was from Forbes, but for those of you who like video games, of which I am not one of them, there is an app out there called Guardians. And so like Guardians of the Galaxy, I mean, not like that, but that's how you spell it, but it's called Guardians, and it gamifies habits. So anybody out there that is super interested, like if that is something that you find motivating, like leveling up and things like that, you could check out that app to gamify your habits.
Awesome. Kim, can you put that in the chat so that people can see that?
I can do that, yes.
Not just the name, so that we, in case somebody
Yep.
misheard it.
You betcha.
Awesome. So a couple things I heard there was picking a habit and tracking it, even if it's a small habit. And another thing we heard there as far as action item is try to figure out, I think a lot of us are, whether you choose to be or whether you like to be competitive with others, I think almost everyone is internally competitive with themselves. So that is the gamification. We always talk about gamification of fitness, gamification of nutrition. Awesome. So we'll kick off this next question with Trent as well, and go around to the other coaches if they have any that Trent don't mention. But there's the media, even prior to this, has been always great about putting many things in front of our eyeballs to read. And so that means that clients and consumers at large always are reading these different articles, they're reading these different things, and there's a lot of myths around nutrition. And so, Trent, if you were to identify, what would you say are 2 to 3 of the top nutrition myths that we can kind of debunk and put some context to?
Yeah, I would say the first biggest one that's still prevalent right now, of course, that I continue to try and educate clients on is that carbs are evil. That in order to see the progress that you want to see, that you need to eat low carb or go keto or anything like that. The research just doesn't support that, and they continue to show that the research doesn't support that. It's all about balance, right? And for those that have been in my nutrition groups or had those conversations with me, it's all about balance. Nobody can argue that most people should be eating more plants, more fruits, more vegetables, more healthy fats, more lean proteins. Like any diet that you look at, they all have you do those same things. And then they all decide which thing to make evil. And then you're not supposed to eat that because that's the reason why you can't lose weight. And that's the reason why you don't have a retirement account. It's really important that you just allow yourself. Now, there is a scale, I would say, when it comes to carbs. Somebody that's much more sedentary, maybe not working out at all, probably can't get away with eating as much. Somebody that's running marathons or training for one can get away with consuming a lot more carbohydrates, and should, because their body needs it for the performance that they're trying to provide their body. So there is definitely a spectrum, but eliminating carbs is not going to be the reason why you lose weight. The reason why you lost weight is by eliminating carbs. You eliminated calories, and potentially trigger foods that you otherwise would eat. I gave the example of chips for myself. Chips are a big one for me. So if I were to technically go on a low carb diet, I would consume a lot less chips because chips are carbs, and I would save a lot more calories, and I would probably lose weight because of it, right? But if I moderate my chips and I only have them once a month, it's probably not going to make that big of a difference, and I'm not going to see these ebbs and flows. So I would say that's probably the biggest one that's still really prevalent right now that I get a lot of questions on. The other one would probably be just nutrient timing in general. I don't get as many questions on it, but I know that they still float out there. Just nutrient timing in general categorizes like, is it important for me to eat breakfast or not? Should I be worried about eating before bed because my body's going to store all that food as fat or not? Should I eat before or after a workout? How many times a day should I eat? Like all those nutrient timing questions. Most of them, and most of them I believed in the early parts of my career, and that's what most of the nutrition research and education for personal trainers and coaches was. Like we were all in the belief that you were supposed to eat 5 to 6 meals a day and so on and so forth. But nutrition is also a very young science, and so the more and more research that comes out on nutrition, the more and more we learn. And in the past 10 years, we've really discovered that most of that timing stuff really doesn't matter. Even if you're getting ready for a bodybuilding competition and you need to be at like peak physical condition, those nutrient timing things aren't really as important as the overall that I brought up before. Eating fruits and vegetables, eating lean proteins, healthy fats, staying away from really processed foods, of course, that kind of thing. So I would say that's number 2. And then depending on the camps that you talk to or the information that you read, I would say the third one is probably stuff to do with meats in general. Like there's a lot of documentaries on Netflix and everything like that that tell you that everything wrong in the world is due to the fact that you consume animal products. So you could obviously have a different conversation in terms of the impact on the world in that regard, but the impact physiologically on the body, the research just doesn't support. Red meat, and I'll end on this to give you a little insight for those who've never heard me talk about this. There were articles and stuff in the media a couple of years ago talking about how bad red meat was for you and how much it could potentially increase your risks of cancer and so on and so forth. And if you look at the research, if you are part of science groups that talk about it and go back and forth and really try to dig deeper into more than just the headline of an article, what you find is that unfortunately with the research that red meat is bad for you gets lumped into the category of many other things, right? So if I do a study that takes a look at everybody in the country, then I'm looking at people that eat red meat who are also people that probably don't exercise all that much, who are also probably people that fall into the category of smoking and maybe drinking and doing a lot of, don't sleep well, have high stress, all these kind of factors that could also be major contributors to the increased risk of cancer. When you extrapolate the red meat for just red meat, and if you're eating like a good piece of steak or anything like that, the research doesn't really support that there's an increased risk of cancer or blood pressure or cholesterol. What we do know is that from a meat standpoint, we want to mostly stay away from the processed stuff. So you shouldn't be eating a lot of Slim Jims and bologna and hot dogs and smoked stuff like beef jerkies and cured meats and stuff like that. Those are really the things to kind of be aware of and limit. Otherwise, steaks and burgers and stuff on occasion are going to be totally fine.
I was bummed to hear when you said bologna because Caden's favorite sandwich right now is bologna and cheese. And we just found that out about 4 weeks ago. And since then, we've been buying bologna. And that was the first time I've had bologna since like middle school when my mom used to pack my lunch. So dang.
I used to have fried bologna and mashed potatoes as lunch on the weekends. Fried bologna.
Wow.
I was sad about the Slim Jims, really. I mean, who doesn't like a good Slim Jim?
No more Slim Jim bologna sandwiches now.
No
more
Slim
bologna.
Jim roll-ups.
Okay. Anything the coaches? Because I think we had another question that I think Trent also hit on there. And we can also get some context, which was, we had a question that had come in, like, what do all diets have in common? And kind of what I heard there was, they kind of isolate this one thing to avoid, but they all kind of have, hey, let's eat some more vegetables. Let's reduce our calorie intake, et cetera. So, Trent, you can certainly add context to that question as well. But I also wanted to see if Kim or Josh, we'll go Kim first, anything else that you think would be helpful for clients to hear with nutrition?
Well, I think one of the things that I heard Trent say, and I think this is true not just for nutrition, but beware of rigid thinking, right? Which is the sort of all or nothing, that red meat is always bad, or that, growing up, it was for a long time, eggs, like, right? Kids' eggs, high cholesterol. And I think that's probably where I go. It's just like, okay, beware of any kind of anything that's presented to you that is sort of an all or nothing kind of approach, is, I think, just a good thing to keep in mind for any of that.
What about Josh? Anything?
Yeah, I guess I'm the same thing. Yeah, if it sounds too good to be true or requires very little effort, it's probably not that easy. And it might work for a short period of time, but not for the long haul.
Awesome. Trent, anything else with nutrition?
Yeah, I'll just add, and again, many of you have probably had conversations with, but for those that I haven't, it's once you dive into the information around nutrition, what you very quickly realize, which is why I love it so much, is that there's really not that much difference from a physiological standpoint of what's going on, no matter what diet you choose. But there's a huge psychological difference, right? So when it comes to a diet, when it comes to dieting, trying to lose weight, maintain your weight, just be healthier, reduce inflammation, which I know Roxanne sent us an email about the other day. Most of those are going to follow very similar habits, and the reasons why you might not be following what you should be following is not due to any sort of physiological difference between diets. It's more of that psychological difference. So finding a diet that suits your lifestyle is super, super important. Low carb diets work. We've seen a bunch of people that have great success on low carb diets, and people have great success doing shake diets like, what's that? Shakeology or something like that, right? Those all can provide a good balanced diet for anybody, but the rigidity of a diet, like Kim brought up, usually also mentally has you thinking that there's a finish line, right? And with nutrition, there can't be a finish line. So if you're so rigid with yourself that you're thinking, okay, I can just put my head down and do this for 3 months, but I going into it already don't see myself doing this for the rest of my life, and I'm just gonna like scrape by for the next 3 months, then it's already the wrong diet for you. So it's trying to find the balance and integration of what works for you to be healthy and enjoy the life that you have.
Awesome. A question that we often ask clients that I think is good to hear is, and because you can ask yourself this question, both with nutrition choices, workout frequencies, really anything, which is on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in that decision? Right? So if you're going to make a commitment to do X, whether we're talking workout, nutrition, even outside of any of this stuff, how confident are you? And be honest with that answer. If it's a 5, then we know the chances of sticking with that, other than maybe for a little bit of a sprint mentality. And as long as that's the expectation, maybe that's okay. But if it's a 9 or a 10, then it's pretty solid and can kind of turn from a decision into what hopefully will roll into a habit. So awesome. So as we kind of wrap up our questions before you all hopefully ask some questions, I'd like to ask our last question, which is, okay, we've heard all this great workout stuff. We've heard all this great nutrition stuff. Kim, we'll start with you. How would you kind of, a lot of us are, and we did a whole podcast on this as a simple plug there. I believe it was last week or 2 weeks ago, on resetting yourself. But I think that's a great question to kind of wrap up with, is hopefully many of us are starting to be on the other end of transitioning into, we've dealt with the stress and anxiety of all this new change, and now we're kind of stuck in the ruck of it. And now we want to kind of, whenever that is appropriate for each of us, we kind of want to get into this new normal. So Kim, where would you go if somebody were to kind of, how would you answer the question of, resetting yourself?
Yeah, the first thing I would put out there is to do a body scan. So jump right into that. And the reason I say that is that the chances are, if you are needing a reset and you're feeling pretty burnt out, you're holding it somewhere in your body. So the most common thing I think I see is like we've got our shoulders in our ears. That's a big one. And a lot of times we don't even know that. I know for me sitting, we're all sitting a little bit more than we used to, but sitting over the Zoom, kind of the Zoom, I sound like my parents, but sitting over Zoom and actually having your shoulders up in your ears, you don't even know that you have you don't even know you really have the tension because you've been holding it for so long. So the first place I go is to do a body scan. And that really can be just as basic as sitting for 30 seconds and just try to pay attention kind of from top to bottom, where you're feeling things in your body. The second place I go is to hit your big rock, which is, I know Doug has done blog posts about this in the past, but one of your big rocks is going to be your sleep. I mean, obviously there's nutrition in there too, but if you're not sleeping well, if you're waking up in the middle of the night, then it's a good time to pay attention to the term we use a lot now is sleep hygiene. So are you having too much screen time before bed? Do you need to work on some things around that? But if your sleep is out of whack, pretty much everything else is going to be out of whack. And then the third point there really in terms of a reset, I think, is spending some time getting to know yourself well enough to know your simple pleasures. And Doug and I did talk about this on the podcast last week, and I think we both managed to list out like 3, of which I feel like I probably, I'm sure I have more if I think about it, but I was surprised at how much, I really had to think about what my simple pleasures are that recharged me. So there's things I like to do. I mean, I like to write. That's a good use of my creative time, but that's not always recharging in quite the same way. And so for me, I had to sort of, really sit down and think about those. And to give you an example, one of them is my first cup of coffee. And the term I've started using in terms of those simple pleasures and things that kind of fill your tank is to not let them get hijacked. And my best example on that is to sit down with a cup of coffee and do work on the computer or be on my iPad or check my email. And when I do that, I'm letting that get hijacked and it's not filling my tank in quite the same way. So really, do the quick body scan, check your big rocks, especially your sleep, and then really spend a little bit of time listing out what some of your simple pleasures are and try to schedule those in as often as you can during the day.
Awesome. Yeah. Like I mentioned, Kim and I did a whole podcast on this a week or so ago, and it was alarmingly challenging to identify what your simple pleasures are. And I loved the context of, not letting them get hijacked because, similar to Kim, I used the morning coffee example. Well, morning coffee in peace and quiet is a simple pleasure. Morning coffee in one hand with laptop and 300 emails to answer in the other is not a simple pleasure. So I think, the yes, identify a simple pleasure is what I'm hearing, but also put some boundaries or some guardrails to not let that get, which if you have kids, that means just waking up even earlier. So it's certainly challenging for sure, but good action item. Josh and Trent, any parting thoughts on kind of resetting or just maybe some recap words?
No, I guess, kind of protecting or being a little bit selfish on the stuff that does reset you. I agree. I'm similar to Doug. Waking up a little bit earlier to get that coffee time, or for me, it's reading no sports news right now, which is a shame. The other thing I do to kind of reset is just kind of going back to exercise. But if I'm feeling stressed or whatever, just get out, go for a walk, kind of shut everything off, even if it's for 3 or 4 minutes, and then come back with a different mindset, hopefully. Harder than it sounds, but.
Yeah, no, I don't really have anything to add. As I was doing my body scan and Kim was talking about it, I realized my jaw was a little tight. So I've been moving my jaw a bunch ever since she said it. But no, it's It's been just like everything else that we're dealing with. It's, for me personally, it's been rediscovering what those simple pleasures can and need to be in what's going on. Like, as many of us do on this panel, and many of you probably also do, enjoy a simple pleasure is watching sports, and that's obviously not happening. So the only simple pleasure that I've got, which many people that have that simple pleasure have gotten, is everything in regards to The Last Dance and Michael Jordan, or watching reruns of everything. So that's been really, really cool to watch. That's been definitely a simple pleasure of mine. And I rediscovered a simple pleasure of mine thanks to Chris's idea of going for the walk run. It got me, and thanks to the fact that Biddeford's Parks took down the basketball hoops, because it forced me to go on that trail run. And I rediscovered my love for trail running, which I haven't done since Scarlett was born, to be honest. And I went out yesterday for my second run, not prompted by anything necessary other than just the enjoyment of getting out there. So.
Awesome.
Wow, that's impressive, Trent. Nice
I know.
job.
I know.
I'm going to just add one more word in there that I think we haven't mentioned, but we've talked around it today, which is boundaries. And the biggest challenge that we've all had in this situation is that those, Doug kind of called them, guardrails, but we don't have the same kind of boundaries that we used to have in terms of being able to leave our house to do things. And so and I say this, I think, every week on the podcast, and to every client I don't have kids, and I cannot imagine what life must be like right now. But I do think trying to create some boundaries, which is also what Josh talked about, right? Like that's a big part of what Josh was talking about, and trying to figure out how to get yourself to work out at home is you're trying to set up, it's trying to create some boundaries so that one thing doesn't bleed into the other. And that's where we're at, is that life is kind of bleeding, the parts of our lives are bleeding all over the place into each other. And I think a lot of us, that's where the burnout comes from, is trying to sort out really how to get those back a little bit. So.
Awesome. All right, y'all, to respect everybody's time here, speaking of boundaries, we'll shift over to any questions that anybody on the call has. You can unmute yourself. I see Roxanne already unmuted herself, so we'll go to her first. And if you also, just for some accountability, because a lot of the people on the call today are clients, if you have one action item or takeaway from today, I'd love to have you put it in the chat. You don't have to speak publicly about it, but I think I'd love to put that in the chat, because you have 3 of your coaches watching that chat, and maybe they can hold you accountable to that. So Roxanne.
Thank you. Really good points from all of you today. And I think for me, when I bring it together, one of the things that I've been pretty successful over the last few months is I'm not thinking about it as a diet. I'm thinking about it as a meal plan, something that we've changed. And doing it differently has made my husband and I, because we both are the cooks in our house, and we don't have kids here, so we don't have to worry about other family members. But for me, having that piece change as a meal plan has made all the difference, because we've planned it. Everything is planned out. And it's been very helpful to me to break that habit of going to those sweets or to go to those, snacks. But when do you know you've really broken the habit, is my question. When has it become something routine in your life? Like, I'm still very intentional about it, and it's been almost 4 months. So when do you know you've actually broken that old habit?
How much brain space does it take up? That's the question that popped into my head right away, is like, how much brain space are you using? Or emotional labor is a term that I learned from my wife that I think really applies there. But I would guess that for you, you're probably spending, even though you're very conscious and intentional about it, that the lifestyle shift perhaps is less of the emotional labor, maybe going into it. That's my thought.
Well, I think that's part of it, is it has lessened. It's also because I used to have to explain it a lot to my husband. Now I don't have to explain it, because he understands it. He understands, some of the principles, that getting more vegetables and having a fruit. So that to me means it's becoming more of a routine.
Yeah, they say technically they now say about 60 plus days So 60 plus days is really where, not that once you pass the 60 days, you no longer have to think about it, but it starts to be easier to think about. You've built a lot of habits, you've built a lot of traditions and consistency. And I just, again, using myself as an example, the headspace that Kim talked about, the emotional space that Kim talked about, is kind of what you need to use as your barometer. If you still eat a salad because you think it's going to help you lose weight, and you really have to think and use a lot of emotional space to decide to eat a salad versus having some sort of other easy, convenient, and not so good for you dish, then there's still probably some work to do, and you're still probably having to be very intentional with that decision. If I have a salad, it's not, I just want a salad, you know, like it's there's no emotional labor with me wanting a salad. And so once you get to that space, there may be certain spots, like I know with you, Roxanne, in particular, it's the intention of eating that piece of fruit over having the snack that you know you shouldn't. So there's still a lot of intention there, but also continue to remind yourself of those places within your day and within your week that you don't have to have that much emotional labor, and you're still making good decisions, because that's important.
And the only thing I would end with here to let other folks, ask their questions is, I think, to me, what I've learned over these last, few weeks, 9 weeks, whatever it's been, is the word patience. Having patience with myself and having patience with my husband, because we're in the same household all day long. But that, to me, has made all the difference too, is the patience we have with each other, and to have some boundaries, which we've managed. So that's what I would say for I think what's made it in this household work a little bit better.
Awesome. Yeah. Roxanne, when you were talking about the habit thing, I loved Kim and Trent's point. The other thing that we reference a lot is, when do you become unconsciously competent at something, right? So there's 4 levels of learning. And so the first, or 4 levels of awareness, right? So the first one is unconsciously incompetent, meaning you don't even know that you don't know that you're not good at X, right? So you're just not even aware that you're doing it. And then there's consciously incompetent. So you know that you're not supposed to be eating this way, or you're not supposed to be doing this thing, but you just don't understand it. And then there's consciously, where you have to think. That's probably where you're at right now, right? You're consciously competent. You understand what you're trying to do, but you still have to think about it. And then you get to the highest level, which is unconsciously competent, where you're just like, it's just so ingrained in you. It doesn't even require, as Kim said, any emotional labor or thought. So that kind of hierarchy, and we all have that outside of course, fitness and nutrition, but that kind of 4 levels of awareness is a good thing to keep in mind. So
my new goal. Thank you.
Awesome. What else we got? Anything? Don't make me pick on you. Amy's the only one with a video on, so I can only pick on her, because everybody else might be multitasking.
I know I feel pressured, but I can't think of a question. I just think it's all helpful information, though.
Good. Just messing with you. If you didn't see it in the chat, just a couple things that I wanted to highlight. Marianne referenced that it was great to hear that she is not the only one struggling. And that kind of goes back to how we kick this off, which is be kind to yourself, and to realize that in some way, shape, or form, all of us are struggling. And so you're not alone, and it's your experience. You have to kind of, be kind to yourself and realize that it's okay that you are struggling. But also, she said, it's okay to start over. And then, Heather had mentioned the action item takeaway for her, which I loved. I'd actually never heard that before. I love that, oftentimes I'll set alarms for things, but the countdown factor versus just an alarm, I think is an awesome strategy as well. And Kelly has no mic or video, so we can't listen to her. Awesome.
We're still lucky.
Yeah. Anything else before we wrap up the hour?
I'm just thankful for your time and these opportunities you're giving us to have the support and all this stuff that's very helpful to continue on, like my exercise and nutrition. Just the reiteration of stuff is very helpful.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amy. Awesome. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed our Wellness Roundtable, and this will be episode 61 on the 1% Better Show. So if you do want to listen to the recording, we will be taking this and using it as this week's episode for the 1% Better Show. A little multitasking here. So thanks so much for joining us. And as always, if you have any other questions, the coaches that were on the call today, they all have a very simple email address. It's just their first name at sperlingfitness.com. So Kim at sperlingfitness.com, Trent at sperlingfitness.com, and Josh at sperlingfitness.com. So you can, of course, individually reach out to them if you have questions. But thanks so much for being on, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.